pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Ronald Holly.
Here.
Roland Curall.
Here.
Mitch Dowd.
Here.
Brett Caboche.
Here.
Roland Guidry. Brian Marks.
Here.
And Levee Rom.
Here.
Monty Bates.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you've been presented the minutes of last month's meeting. I have a motion to accept. Moved by Mac, second by Roland Curall. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right. President's report. Okay, I just want to report on the ALBL meeting. I think we had pretty good success, good turnout. Appreciate those coming, and pretty interesting. We had some good singers after the band kind of stopped and one person took over. It was pretty good.
Not me.
Well, not me.
We tried to get you out there, you didn't want to go.
And just on a different note, I ask everyone to keep Mr. Roland Guidry in their prayers. I think he's struggling right now, missing, not a meeting, but his health is at the utmost importance right now. So please keep him in your prayers. Okay, we move over to executive committee. Mr. Ron.
Okay, executive committee met Monday, May the 1st. We committed reviewed the financial for the past month. We also discussed the potential surplus vehicles the district may no longer need and the likelihood of needing new vehicles within the next 2 fiscal years to replacing aging vehicles currently being used by other district personnel. Mr. Mathern will provide the committee with annual calls for insurance coverage on potential surplus vehicles for the next meeting. Also, we discussed the reconnecting the Viaduct Canal to Lafourche. We upgraded the committee on the progress of the reconstruction of the Red Canal to Lafourche project. Mr. Mathern informed the committee that GIS engineering would now analyze not only a weir and a siphon, but also a concept concerning the elements of a weir and siphon in order to address problems inherent in each approach. The report of this analysis is scheduled to be complete before the end of May. The Drainage District number 1 informed the committee and had been contacted by the Lafourche Parish regarding surplus funds available for drainage related project to be undertaken by the Levee District. Mr. Mathern reported that the Levee District attorney was looking to bring in the necessary agreements related to its potential funding source. Also, we will brief the committee on the bid results of the E-North Levee Improvement Project, and that the project engineer will be recommending award on May the 8th meeting. Mr. Mathern informed the committee the change order with the forthcoming for Illy contracted to route a derelict culvert running under the road at the project site. The Yankee Canal and East Erosion Preserves, Mr. Mathern shared with the committee the operations superintendent Jay Woodland was notified by our mobile equipment operators that the Yankee Canal was in need of repair in order to reduce the risk of damaging our tractors and mowers that contain the grass on the levee. My understanding the levee is deteriorating on the inside, not on the water side. And it's not a potential threat to flooding, but it's present damaging our equipment. The board, Mr. Mathern informed the board that it received 3 quotes to chop and reshape the levee and after coordinated with the Levee District. Board president requested Compo and Sons to perform the work as they had provided the lowest quote. Mr. Mathern informed the committee that he had met that morning with Parish President Archie Chiasson and Greater Port Commission Executive Director Chet Chiasson to discuss funding needed for construction of the Ted Gisclair Lock. President Chiasson informed Mr. Mathern that the Lafourche Parish government was submitting an application to receive hazard mitigation grant program funds in the amount of $15 million to dedicate to construction of the lock project. Together with the $5 million dedicated to the Levee District and $5 million dedicated to CPRA, all funding for construction of the lock should be available once all permitting is complete, and that's assuming that the bids come in under 25 bid. If it does, we'll be looking for other sources. My understanding at the meetings that Port Commission will entertain doing something at that point once we know exactly what it's needed. Two other items for discussion, the board of the meeting will join. Motion by Monty Van Eck, second by Keith Giving, unanimously carried.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Okay, moving on, audience comments, someone here to address the board? Okay. General manager report, Nick.
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. First up, for informational purposes, it ended up not being an issue, but we were notified on April 15th about a water leak near pump station number 7. It's now the Delta Farm Road. There was water leaking across Delta Farm Road on the outside of our system, north of the gate on the road, just south of Tidewater Dock. The parish had worked on this line days before this call. The water line was lower in the ground. The parish wanted to elevate it, and then days later it started leaking inside the meter. So there were no pressure issues at the station. This is just for information because we had a call and we sent our guys out to make sure. That was on a Saturday. And near this site, I just left the meeting actually at Tidewater Dock. The Corps called the meeting between us, Tidewater Dock, Enbridge, whose facility is just opposite Delta Farm Road from Tidewater Dock, North Lafourche Levee District, and Terrebonne Levee District to discuss let me back up a little bit and see, just off the map here, but there's going to be a floodgate across the intercoastal right in this area that's going to be part of the Morgan's Lily Gulf Eastern expansion, and they're trying to determine exactly where that gate's going to go because you've got a spider web of pipelines out there. You also have the question of how to tie into our system right there in section F, and whether they're going to go around Enbridge's facility or if we have to put gates across the road or make a ramp over our levee. There's a lot that they have to determine after this meeting we just had, and that's where Wendell currently still is, because I had to leave to make sure that I can keep you guys some time here. But it's in all likelihood, the guys who were there from Enbridge couldn't really speak for the company. They would just kind of gather information, saying some 10,000 foot level view objections that Enbridge would probably have to some of the things they were planning. So this is not going to be a tomorrow kind of decision. Potentially, well, even one of the solutions we talked about was if they enclose Enbridge, possibly moving pump station number 7, that it could be cheaper to move our pump station than to tie all the way back in. So pluses or minuses, we'll see as that develops, and I'll definitely keep y'all informed as things change.
That
Sure.
would be at the cost of the.
Yes, that would not be our cost. That would be totally borne by the board. Yeah. So, to be continued. On the LA1 elevated highway, construction is ongoing on that 8.3 mile extension from Golden Mill to Leeville. The contractor, Jones Construction out of Geismar, is on there. That should be complete around the end of 2028 at a cost of $463 million. But where it concerns us is you can see the location of where it crosses over our levee in relation to the 4-lane highway and Catfish Lake in the background. The T-wall that's being constructed along our levee is going to be to a top elevation of 21 feet. It's crossing at about a 45-degree angle to our levee right there. And the T-wall is going to consist of 5 connected monoliths, 60 feet long each, so 300 total feet long of T-wall. And then concrete scour protection is going to extend another 60 feet on either side of that T-wall, where it ties into the earthen part of our levee. We're going to have 3 foot 10 inches of clearance between the top of the wall and the bottom of the concrete girders on the bottom of that bridge. But for grass cutting purposes, the levee here is around 18 feet. So we'll have at least 6.5 feet between the top of our levee and the bottom of the bridge. So it should be fine. It'll be a work in progress as that finishes. So Right, so yeah, I mean, it won't be our tractors that are going there, you know, it'll be our zero turns and weed eaters, so. But we'll figure that out as it moves along. That steel, there's a steel sheet pile cutoff wall under the T-wall that goes down to elevation of minus 56 feet. So it's way down there. And then on the back side, see where most of the equipment is, it's still dirt. We're gonna have an access road that we can get around it because we can't run on top of the levee there with the concrete wall. So here you see a drone shot looking north. You can see where it ties into the 4-lane at the end here. Let's see if we can get my pointer on. This is where it'll tie into the 4-lane, and then one on this side. And then the Rouse is in Golden Meadow just here, just for reference of where that is. So everything else will be moved. If you look here, you can see all these concrete pilings. That's the only thing that's staying here. On each side, everything that's going to be steel is just what they're using for construction. So as they build on the end, they're done with this part, they'll move all the construction fittings to the end to continue that end-on construction. And then looking south, you can see that open water is kind of sobering here. But yeah, so this is, the drone is kind of on top of the Apache dock, right just south of Rouse's. Right, they're gonna move the facility. Could be. So that's just some progress photos of how the other one, the T-wall is coming mainly. Next up, we do have a request from Restore Retreat for annual dues of $500 to have them support our work here and to advocate for increased funding of CPRA master plan dollars to be spent on the outside of our area. So if you guys are in favor of continuing that support, we would need a motion for that $500.
Motion by Mitch, second by Mr. Ronald, that we renew dues for the Restore Retreat, $500. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Ronald did mention it in the executive committee, but there was an issue with the culverts running along our D North ramp elevation project. The culverts belonged to Loop, and the culverts may be 30-something years old, and were probably going to fail and need to be either replaced or grouted. And ultimately, the decision was made to just grout those in. So we do have a couple photos of that process where we brought in the grouting material. It was piped into the culverts there just to fill it in with solid concrete so that we wouldn't have a failure under our newly constructed ramp there. So, and as was mentioned, there will be a change order forthcoming. GIS Engineering is working with LA Contracting to clear up some questions that we have with the number of days, so that'll be coming at next month's meeting. Moving on at Yankee Canal, our rock shoreline erosion protection project, and along A East. You guys are all aware that we had reported on last meeting, and that we was going to have some updates on the rock project along Yankee Canal. We asked the contractor to move some of those rocks on that southern end here. So here we have the Leon Terrio Lock, and then A East moving towards the east here. This shoreline between the Loop pipeline flood wall and the southeast corner here has been pretty badly eroded. We do have about 1,000 acres here of open water area where the wave action gets pretty rough and violent and eats away at the toe of the levee here. So we had some of the rocks put along there where you can see the erosion eating up in the toe of the levee. And we have between 6 and 10 feet between where the rocks are and the existing toe of the levee, where we're working with Angela Design to come up with sort of a small concept of where we're going to be able to either haul material in, pull material from the inside, but far enough to where we're not going to undermine the integrity of the water bottoms here and not lose our rocks if we try to dig too closely. So that'll be forthcoming. We'll backfill that and regain some of that we've lost. Also mentioned in the executive committee report, Yankee Canal itself, the levee, that was an old parish levee that we've taken over maintaining. That levee is gotten in some pretty bad shape. Our grass cutters noticed that as they were trying to run the bush hog over it. It was pretty bouncy. We could potentially have some damaged equipment if we don't address it. So we got a few quotes. Compo and Sons ended up having the low quote, so they're going to be, they mobilized the equipment this morning. It was a little too wet, so they'll start the actual process tomorrow. And I tried to get a good photo of it, but it's hard to tell from the photo how bad it is, but it definitely needed to be addressed. So
Just gonna shade or they bring in some stuff?
we'll chop it up and then just reshape it. But just the top, not the entire left sheet. So, but the low quote on that was a total cost of just over $11,000 to do. It's a 5,500 linear foot section of that levee that they'll chop and reshape. So then also, as mentioned, I met with Parish President Archie Chasson and Port Fourchon Executive Director Chet Chasson. There's a lot of Chassons in the room. It was last Monday to discuss the funding needs for the Ted Gisclair lock in the roads that we're going to be looking to construct in the near future. And since we're nearing the end of our permitting process, and Joe can elaborate more on that later, I'm sure, in his report. We've budgeted $5 million of our own funding. CPRA has also approved $5 million from state surplus funding. And the parish had originally allocated $5 million for their share to go to this project, but because the permitting process was taking long, we got the delay after delay from the Corps, that $5 million was spent on other more emergency needs. And so I met with Archie mainly to see what was the plan for their $5 million share. And he shared with us that they were applying for hazard mitigation grant funding that's from FEMA through the state Office of Hurricane or Emergency Preparedness, GOSEP. And they were going to be applying for $15 million for that, which originally we thought was going to be $15 million, assuming now more closer to $25 million. And while Chet couldn't speak for his board officially, he did say that anything over that $25 million, he felt the board would probably be open to discussing pitching in whatever would be remaining. So if that time comes and the quotes are still, the bids that we get in Mr. we'll be able to come back to the board and have that discussion with them for the remainder of the
That's not the parish.
Besides the port, did I say the parish?
No,
Okay. Yeah, the parish has their, right. So anything over the 25, so we have 15 from the parish, 5 from us, 5 from the state. Anything over 25, we'll be able to go to the court and see. And I would imagine at that point there would be more opportunity to chip in the remainder. That's good. We also had, okay, so next week, we're going to be having the Corps coming in on May 17th to meet with us on the status of the, as they have it called, the La Rose to Golden Meadow project. This will be the senior project manager from the Corps in the Programs and Project Management Division, along with some of his staff who works on this and other projects. But we'll be able to update them on the work that we've done, especially since Ida and where we're planning to go next. And we'll bring them around to a few key sites. We'll also be talking to them about the 408 process that we're going through on the La Rose Lock and see what they can scoot along. Because sometimes it's as simple as just having a good relationship with your project management team at the Corps to make a phone call and kind of bird dog these guys up in Vicksburg that are looking at the 408 permitting, to just encourage them to put it at the top of the stack. And something as small as a phone call can be a big help. So we may have more to update you guys on next month after we have those discussions. Really cool. Also, we've done some social media updates. So we've updated our Facebook page address. It used to be SLLD and then the number of our address of our office building. So we've switched that to facebook.com/South Lafourche Levee District. If anybody's interested in finding that page more easily, or you can just go to Facebook and search South Lafourche Levee District and it'll pop up. But we've been trying to be more active in informing the public of what's happening. We posted some pictures. Yep, posted some pictures of what we just showed y'all along Yankee Canal and the southern part of A East. Posted some progress that we've been making on C South and C North. And we've been trying to not only do that, but reference things that we're working on based on landmarks or streets that people will be more familiar with along the 4-lane highway or LA1. Because a lot of this stuff, most people will never see what their tax dollars are doing and not really understand, which we've talked about here at our last meeting. We'll talk about sections, we'll talk about pump station numbers, but maybe people who aren't familiar with the system won't be as familiar with where their home or their business is in relation to them. So, we've also updated, we do post to the public when the status of our floodgates operations changes, when they're going to be mostly closed or mostly open. But what I've realized is that people, and I think I'll attest to this too, those of y'all who use social media, if something doesn't have a picture, people are going to pass right by. If it's just text, people aren't going to read it and notice it. So we came up with these graphics that show when LaRose and Golden Meadow are open and closed, so that as people are scrolling, it'll catch their eye and say, oh, okay, well, now I know the floodgate's going to be closed. I can plan a little better ahead of time accordingly when I'm going to try to get through. Especially right now, with shrimping season just opened last week, that people can be checking their Facebook feed and know, okay, well now I know I'm going to have a little delay when I get to Golden Meadow. I'm going to maybe have to wait, the top of the line. And we just used it for the first time this morning, so people know that as of this morning, both of our gates are on scheduled closings and openings. So hopefully that'll help. Also, as Mr. Ronald mentioned, the ALBL conference, we did have some presentations on renewable energy revenue sharing, the BREEZE Act, and what was the other act? Can't remember off the top of my head. The renewable energy resource revenue sharing. What was it? BREEZE Act. And the other one. We also we had a presentation from the OTD on statewide flood control and the process that goes along with it, the timeline, the types of projects, the budget. Then we had a very helpful and informative presentation on risk rating 2.0 between Dwayne Bourgeois, who's been kind of spearheading those efforts from the ALBL standpoint, and from a representative of the State Attorney General's office. They informed us that the filing date for that lawsuit against FEMA that you guys voted on last meeting to join, that's been postponed to June 1st, which is a lot more meaningful, I guess, of a date at the start of hurricane season. But it also gives more levee districts and parishes time to join on to that lawsuit and for people to submit their own declarations of how risk rating 2.0 and the drastically increased costs of flood insurance are affecting their homes and their businesses. I was able to talk to the Attorney General's representative after that presentation to let her know, like she had mentioned, most of us don't have experience suing the federal government. I definitely don't. So one thing I asked for her to put together is a flow chart, because as they were mentioning in a little bit in their presentation, but a lot more in the conversations that I was having with her, saying, what's the next step? We file this lawsuit and then what? And she said, well, we could do this next, and it could go this way or it could go this way, or we could decide to go this way. And I said, well, can you make a flow chart for us to know what are the possible avenues that this could take, so that we can know, we can let all of our commissioners know, people in our residents, our business owners know what's gonna be happening with this as it goes along. We can have a better idea of, is this gonna take 6 months, 3 years? We have no idea. And so if they can put together, she thought that was a great idea, and they were gonna get to work on that right away. So as soon as I get that, I'll be able to share that with all of you. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to go through our required sexual harassment and governmental ethics trainings. And then a fun little thing we did share on social media was our executive secretary, Linda Curall, was presented with an honorary lifetime membership to ALBO. So that was a fun little thing that we wanted to share. So, yeah. When you get older. We also, last week, we have a new project manager at CPRA who's going to be handling our projects. James McMinnis has taken on more of a supervisory role. He's been our project manager that's mainly dealt with our things that CPRA has funded within our system. Ty Fitzgerald has taken over some of his projects, including all of the Southwest Levee District projects that CPRA has had any kind of funding on. So Ty and James and also Daniel Dearman came down last week, and we were able to show Ty around at the projects that are the D North ramp that's ongoing, they've put some funding for, and also the lock, we took it to along the seawall where the vessel impact barrier is going to be going. The Section F berm, we got to ride on a little bit, where we're going to be doing some work later this year. And then we also rode on Section E North, where later this meeting, I think we're going to be having a recommendation to award a bid to the first phase of that project, which is excavating the fill here along the old canal. That'll then be placed along the berm here at Levee. So that was a good meeting, good chance for Ty to be able to get out here and see in person the projects that he'll be helping us to complete. So, Shores Act, that was the what they stand for.
Sharing all type of entities.
Right. So, then this past Friday, State Rep Joe Ogeron played host to a number of visitors that we had from congressional delegation. We had representative staffers from Congressman Joe Courtney's office of Connecticut, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia of the Houston area in Texas, Congressman David Rouser from the Outer Banks area of North Carolina. We had Congressman Mike Ezel. He's got the little leg of Mississippi, from a little north of Hattiesburg on south to the Gulf. And we also had a staff member from the House of Natural Resources Committee, a subcommittee on water, wildlife, and fisheries, and then a staff member from the House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee on water resources and the environment. And then we had representatives from Congressman Clay Higgins and Congressman Garrett Graves' office. So they took a tour down along the 4-lane. It was raining. We were going to bring them on the lock, but instead, Joe had his cell phone connected to the Bluetooth in the car, and I gave them sort of a tour by phone as they drove down. Joe said, "Okay, we're passing here," so I was able to explain to them what they were looking at as they were passing it up, and then they went down to the Caminada Headland Restoration Project, and then David Rowe took them on a tour of the Port Fourchon facilities in the afternoon. So they were able to see our system. They were able to hear a little bit about our frustrations with risk rating 2.0, and I think it was a good chance for them to be able to, especially from people from other parts. Obviously, Higgins and Graves' staffers know very well what we face down here, but for people of other parts of the country to know the challenges that we have here, I think was a great opportunity. So. But other than that, that's all I've got from my report, Mr. President. If anybody has any questions, obviously, we can take those.
Any questions? Nick? We'll move on, CPRA, has anything report?
Just a couple updates on some amendments to these project agreements. Like you said, we had a good lot of site visits last week. See, I had Section E North, the improvements project there. Just to say that I know that was about to bid out right that first day that we had signed, CPR signed the amendment 4, and I think we hand delivered that. That's the additional $1.3 million to that project. So everything looks good to go on that. The only other one I guess I would say is, on the section at burn improvements. I know we received signed amendment number 1 back from you guys, so that's good to go. I think that's it.
Okay. Corps of Engineers, anyone here from the Corps of Engineers? All right, moving on to project engineers, Ms. Yola.
Yes, on the LaRose Lock project, we did finish our design for the moving of the control house on the northwest side. That'll be the main control house for the lock structure. We submitted everything to the Corps, our new plans and our new calculations. We did get confirmation that they received it and they'll be looking at it soon. And from what we're being told by the engineering group, that's the last piece of the puzzle that needs to get approved by them for their approval. Our next project is the Section E North levee improvements. We accepted bids on April 11th. Construction Site Specialties LLC was a low bidder in the amount of $3,989,321 even, and that's for the base bid plus the 2 alternates. The way we bid this thing is we have 3 separate pits, borrowed pits that we're taking material from. And we bid the base bid as the first pit and alternate 1 as the second pit and alternate 2 as the third pit. We do have enough money from CPRA with the contributions from the Levee District to do the whole thing. So that's gonna be our recommendation for award. Now, this guy's bid, he's from Youngsville, south of Lafayette. From what we've researched about him, he's very knowledgeable about dirt moving and site work. Looks like he has a long resume of doing that type of work. He did leave a lot of money on the table for this project, about $3.4 million. So Nick and myself and Ben Hodson had a discussion with him, and initially he was wanting to pull his bid and get away from the project. And we explained to him the contract and the bid requirements, and that he would have to come up with some kind of justifiable reason to pull his bid. And basically it amounts to, he had to show us that he made a mathematical error in his computations of his bid estimate, which I don't think that he could do that realistically, so we decided to take on the project. So he's given us a letter saying that he wishes to proceed with the award of the project. So all of that being said, I'm willing to answer any questions you may have, but we do recommend awarding the base bid plus both alternates, because this is a good price, and it fits within the budget we have.
And what would you say, the base bid or
And alternate 1 and alternate 2.
So the total bid is $3.98 million. CPRA's funding that we have on this project is about $3.5 million. It would cost us to do basically alternate 1 and alternate 2. It would cost us $448,339. And also, we did mention, I don't know, Daniel, if you remember the exact dollar amount that Ty was mentioning. There was one project that was under. And so we can repurpose some of that money.
Yeah,
from
James
CPRA.
mentioned that. I can't remember which project it was.
I believe it's around $100,000.
Yeah.
So it would be even cheaper.
It was 2 pieces and it added up to about 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be closer to $350,000, our share.
How long is the project?
I want to say it's about a year. Now, this project is just to dig the borrowed pit material and dump it on the inside of the levee. It doesn't involve grading, shaping, or building the crown. So the way we've been doing these projects is we bring in the borrowed material, we dump it on the ground, we let it dry for a period of time, and then either the levee district decides to do it with their own crews or do another project to grade it in our prediction is that we can, with this amount of material that we're gonna move, we're gonna get everything to the right elevation, and we'll also be able to do some inside berm improvements, which we sorely need in that area. So our recommendation is still
Now, we discussed in the executive committee meeting to go ahead and to keep us right, so we got to vote. I mean, you're gonna put your bulldog in on something.
and we'll add
So we feel good with
no,
that.
it's not, we don't mind, we told the guy, we'll help him,
Yeah,
help him out as much as we can, but, the expectation is to get all the material there.
do the job.
And we kind of told him about, what the pitfalls were of the last project that we did, and the methodology that we thought would work best, and he agreed, and that was what he said, how he envisioned doing the project. So he has a good knowledge of what needs to be done, and I think he has the experience and equipment to do it. I just think that the next price was a lot higher than his, so it kind of freaked him out.
Yeah. Okay.
They've also recently been awarded a contract by Terrebonne Levee District to do levee construction in Terrebonne, so he'll be in the area.
Okay, well, you've heard the recommendation of the engineer to award the contract. Moved by Monty, second by Mac. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
So our next project is the Hurricane Ida storm damage repairs to the pump stations and floodgates. Randolph Shipyard's the contractor. They've been working on electrical component replacement on the pump stations and the floodgates. We have another meeting with them coming up this week. They are getting close to finishing. They got a few, like 4 or 5 outstanding items that need to be completed, and we're working on them to complete this. He has submitted the application number 6 in the amount of $45,363.92, and we do recommend that you pay this.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of the engineer. Pay request number 6 in the amount of $45,363.92 to GIS Construction. Motion by Mr. Ronald, second by Robert Curall. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Hurricane Ida storm damage repairs to the main office. Randolph Shipyard is the contractor. He's been working on, most of the exterior stuff is complete or nearing completion, touch-up paint, little knick-knack stuff. The interior, they hung the sheetrock last week. They're mudding, taping, mudding, and floating. They plan on, if everything goes right this week, they'll start painting the interior later this week or the next week. We're looking at sometime maybe mid-June to end June in nearing completion.
Completed.
You did expand the air conditioning capacity, like I've seen more air conditioners on the side they had before.
We did make some changes to the air conditions. That was part of the project. But I don't think we expanded the capacity, but we did make some changes. So we do have pay application number 5 in the amount of $133,211.25, and we do recommend it.
Okay, you heard the recommendation of our engineer, KGIS, pay request number 5 in the amount of $133,211.25. Moved by Brian, second by Brett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And also, as a side note to this, Mendel and Nick have asked me to look at the roof, and we had a new roof put on there, but I have this guy that's he's a metal roof expert, so he went up there and looked at the screw patterns and the flashing, and he's gonna make some recommendations for some improvements. The screw patterns don't quite meet what he would consider to be good practice in a high wind velocity area that we have. There's also some some flashing, some certain parts of the flashing that he would like to see addressed, because it has a tendency, if the wind catches the flashing, it'll pop the flashing up and then damage the panels. It's not overall, it looks like a good job, it just, he's gonna make some recommendations to improve it, so that, you know, if you get a really strong wind next time around, it'll hold together. And he'll come up with that recommendation. We met with him Friday afternoon, we'll come up with that recommendation within the next week or so. Okay, and D North Levee Project Phase 2, Outer Limit Contractors is the contractor. We held the pre-construction meeting last week and the notice to proceed was issued for today, May 8th. This is the area between the Schwess Farm and the Loop Brine Storage Pit where we had some overtopping during Hurricane Ida. We're going to raise the elevation in this area from a +4 to +16. And the repairs to the Ontario Lock flood wall and the loop flood wall. This is where we had some scouring during Hurricane Ida, and we're going to add some block revetment mats, open cell revetment mats to both sides. Circle LLC is the contractor. We held a pre-construction meeting, and a notice to proceed for this project is also made.
And they were delivering mats this morning on passport.
Started delivering today? They plan on bringing the mats in by truck and then stitching them all together in place. That's the plan. And they say they're gonna get it done fairly quick, so hopefully that'll be done in the next couple of weeks. D North and A East levee repairs. Campo and Sons is the contractor. This is where we had some scouring on the levee itself due to Hurricane Ida. The project is complete. They submitted invoice number 1131 in the amount of $8,645 even, and we do recommend it.
All right, gentlemen, you heard the recommendation, engineer, to pay Campo and Sons invoice number 1131, amount of $8,645. Moved by Max, second by Mitch, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
GIS, John or Laura? Ms. Laura?
Do it.
Happy money time.
It's good money today. And we'll leave that to John for next time. So the first update is on the 8 East Bayou Water Retention. We are continuing to work with DNR on extending the permit that they had previously issued. Again, the plans and specs for this are complete. We are just working through, like I said, the permitting, but then also the services. We need to get those moving. Next up is D North Ramp. So the contractor on this is LA Contracting. They got the notice to proceed on February 13th. Right now, their estimated completion date is June 18th. I think that's going to be extended some due to weather days. We're working through that. But they have continued to place the bypass road and then placing lifts on the north and south levee portions. There is a change order, I believe, on your agenda, but we are pulling that for this time because we're negotiating days. So we've got the cost in there, but then we're negotiating days. So we'll have that for the June meeting.
Where does that make exactly? Dealer? It's on
So the loop road crossing
the loop?
It's the loop.
Yeah, okay.
Bicycle or road.
Okay, that's it.
Going to-
We've hit some balls there before.
Just
couldn't find them.
Here we go.
Man,
I don't think I'll ever hit that.
All right.
Slice from the baby.
Find them little people in there.
last one is the reconnection of Burton Canal. As Mr. Ronald had mentioned, we're finalizing a study and report for the end of this month, which will be looking at siphon a weir, but then also a combination of siphon weir. We're doing pros and cons, and cost estimates for those, and so we'll be back at your June meeting, to
So
make our
you should have
recommendation.
something better to do?
Yes.
Okay, good. Anything else?
That's it.
Good, thanks, Mark. Any questions? All right, Angela Dezona and Neil.
All right, on the Seaside levee reshaping and compaction, that contractor, Grand Isle Shipyard, is continuing to work on raising that levee up to plus 18. Everything from the shooting range going north has been complete. Now they're starting to work on the final shaping of the shooting range going south towards the base on pump station. We think this project's going to be complete sometime in mid to late July. I mean, June.
Are we below the shooting range yet?
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next project is Sea North Levee improvements. This is from just north of the Apache Farm and the Paul Lutheran Bridge, going all the way up to Highway 24. That contractor, Compo and Sons, is continuing to work to raise that levee up to plus 13.5. Here in the middle of the picture, you can see one of the old eye walls that cross the levee with the pipelines. There's actually 3 of them in that vicinity. This is one of them. But we're recommending approval today of their invoice number 1136 in the amount of $96,065.02.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of engineer to pay Compo and Sons invoice number 1136 in the amount of $96,065. Moved by Mike, second by Mr. Roland Curall. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
All right, the next project is Seaside Floodslide repairs. So this project is actually 2 different components. What you're seeing here is a stockpiling just right at the south end of Apache Farm. We've got Nick Walker with Walker Construction stockpiling material from the Bar Canal. There's a first phase of the project that Compo and Sons and Grand Isle Shipyard completed, which was the clearing of all of the flood-side debris from Apache Farm all the way down to just north of the base on pump station. Right now, we're just looking at the final volumes that are available, and we'll be making some recommendations to the levee district in the upcoming week on how to proceed with utilizing that material. So the next project is Yankee Canal and Section 8 East erosion repairs. Here you can see the Yankee Canal is off on the left side of the picture going up towards Lafourche. That contractor, Grand Isle Shipyard, is finalizing the construction. They're actually complete now with the work as of today to put riprap on the toe of the Yankee Canal levee. I think we have one additional slide. Yeah. So there's some additional work that we added to the project as an emergency. This is just east of the little T-wall that you can see off on the right side of the picture. And then Bayou Lafourche is off on the far top right. This is an area that was severely eroding, so we added some material to the contract that Grand Isle Shipyard to utilize the riprap in this area as well. We're recommending a change order in the amount of $234,380.40, and that's for that additional work that was added to the project. We also have some additional time that was added to the project, 126 days, and that was for the additional work added to the project, which was minimal on time, but also for we went through about 3 months or 4 months of low water levels in the Mississippi River where they couldn't actually get material for the project. So we're recommending that change order for the $234,380.40 and the 126 days.
Okay, and you're good with that?
Yeah.
You heard the recommendation of engineer to accept change order number 1 in the amount of $234,380.40. Motion. Matt, second by Monty. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
So also for this project, project, we're recommending approval of their pay application number 2. That's in the amount of $1,419,106.23. And that's for everything on the project except for all the retainage.
All right, you heard the recommendation engineer, pay application number 2 to GIS, an amount of $1,419,106.23. You move it? Second by Mr. Long. All in favor? Opposed?
So just for reference before we move on, this is Yankee Canal right here, like Neil was saying. This is the section of levee that we're gonna be having Coco and Sons chop and reshape, right about the midway up along where it jogs back north here. And then the rock continues around. And this is our siphon here, pump station number 4 is just off the screen, just out of the picture. Just for reference, how all this ties in together.
Also, on the next slide that Nick has, you can see the gap between the rocks and the actual erosion. So we tried to place the rocks as far out on the shelf as we could without getting into the deeper water. And we're working right now to come up with a volume on what it's gonna take to actually fill in that gap. One of the options that Drake and I discussed this morning is potentially just waiting till Pacillo and Associates, I think Joe was looking at a bigger project in this area. I think the emergency has been addressed here. So the most cost-effective option might be to let Joe deal with backfilling this when they have a lot of material available. But we'll get that volume to you later this week, and then we can see where you're gonna go from there. Next project is the Larose flood wall impact barrier. We received all the permits for the project and final approval from CPRA, and we're gonna begin advertising for this project next week.
And we are gonna put some in the flood wall for the church.
We do have an alternate bid for that. That's gonna be, the project's actually gonna be a base bid that we think is gonna be about a $1 million base bid. And then we have an alternate bid for another $400,000. That'll be some smaller pile clusters and intermittent. Another alternate bid for another $400,000, and that would complete all of the pile clusters that we need along the intercoastal. And then we'll have a third alternate bid for a couple of clusters in the bottom. And the last project I have is the Section F berm improvements. We've submitted all plans and specs to the state. Final approval has been given by CPRA. I think we're just waiting on final funding approval to begin advertising. And it sounds like from Daniel's report, I think that's just about wrapped up. So we'll coordinate with Nick and start advertising. That's all I have.
Any questions for Neil? All right, anyone from Delta Coast? Also, that's Stevie Smith.
Like change guys, so they're like, hey, this coming, 75 years. So I have 3 projects, Mr. Chairman, to report on. First one is the Golden Meadow Terraces. Unfortunately, the parish made a grant application to fund this project, which is going to be around the Cactus Lake. That application for funding was not approved. They got notice of that on my I have talked to Megan at the parish. She was supposed to figure out if there was more funding within this program, we needed to reapply. But as of today, there's no funding for that project. So we just have to figure out another funding source, right? And again, for those of you who don't know, that was a series of terraces and also some marsh creation in that part of the world. Yeah. The second thing on this is a Reach K Terrace project. So this is a project that the terraces over at Reach K was some mitigation for the Reach K&L project. Some of these terraces were damaged back in Hurricane Barry. We got a PW written through FEMA for close to $1 million to repair the terraces. Working with the Terrebonne Levee District, the suggestion was made to, instead of rebuilding them in this location, to rebuild them in a location that would be over to the left-hand side of this image That's closer to the Bayou Pointe-Chien Ridge, which should have been better soils, better place to build terraces. In order for us to build them over there instead of over here, we had to make a request of FEMA to allow us to do that. Frankly, recently, as the end of last week, we received notification that our initial request had not been approved. And I'm gonna try not to get too much into weeds. FEMA told us not to submit it as an alternate project, but to submit it as a relocation project, okay, which is two different terms that they use. The relocated project, if we would move it under that category, we have to do a benefit cost analysis to show them that it's at least as the same price, if not less, than what we propose on the other side. This is even more complicated, everybody, because, again, going back to the old Reach K, that was a dynamic between this board and the Terrible 11 District going back several years for the board members who have been here, we talked about this for years. So it is an interrelationship to what the Terrible 11 District wants to do and what FEMA's gonna allow. So I literally talked to Reggie, everybody, just before I walked in this meeting. I told him what I told you, and he asked that we just get together tomorrow and talk about it in further detail. Okay, so it's a long way of saying it is the original plan to do it under FEMA and move it to the left was not approved. We still may be able to get it moved over there, but we got to decide what kind of data they're gonna need to do that. And again, since Reggie and the Terrible Images kind of fits the bill for this anyway, it kind of has to flow through them. Okay. So we'll hold off until next month, Mr. Chairman, on that. We'll see what happens. Okay. The last one on my list is the general Hurricane Ida response. There's two things to mention here. The first is a good one, and I know Wendell and Nick know a little bit about this, is the state has made available some funding to pay for local entities, local cost share for Hurricane Ida response. So to get very specific, this board probably spent, what, $5 to $6 million, Nick and Wendell, on debris removal off the levees after Ida. You had to pay roughly 10% of that as a local cost share. So let's just say the number's 500,000, somewhere in that range, which you were, it's out of your pocket, okay? So the state just announced in the last 2 weeks that there's money going to be made available for local entities like this district to defray that $500,000 cost, okay? So you don't have the money yet, but it ought to be coming. We have to work together to figure out how you make application for those funds. Again, I know Mary and Nick and I have been in some email strings to address that. So frankly, that's a really good thing, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, all that stuff is going to come up to $5 to $6 million cost at no cost to this board, right?
Except for the 8%.
Except for the interest, that's right, that's right. But y'all know what, right?
We get,
Yeah, what's the value?
funding for that?
I don't think they heard that, Mr.
No, actually don't know. If they get funding for the interest?
Ms. Ross says, can we get their interest back?
Well, with all the money they're throwing around, then the money comes back.
There might be. The only other thing to that is another large outstanding item is the money that was expended cleaning out Grand Maya and what we call the laydown area up at the floodgate project. I'm looking at John Law, who obviously.
On the Knockham property.
I'm sorry?
The Knockham property, right?
Yeah.
LA 24.
More recently.
Right. It used to be Joe Clay.
So again, this board spent $2.5 million to clean that area up. Again, I'm looking across the table to get the right number. It's the same kind of dollars from your perspective as cleaning up debris out the way. True, we've been going back and forth to get that obligated. I think we're very close to getting that obligated, which means you may see another $2.5 million come back. And again, there would be a 10% deduction from that, so you might see 2.25 come back. But again, with this other funding source, we maybe get the 250 back. Okay? But that still is in process. There's been, truthfully, some very trying to be nice, but you need a good word. It's been silly about going back and forth with that. So that's still a work in progress. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Steve, come back anytime.
With that kind of news.
All right, legal permits and right of ways. Mitch, anything?
All right, we have 4 this month. The first one being CPRA. Got 2 of them for Perdido Energy Louisiana LLC and 1 for Chevron Environmental Management Company. After reviewing these four, it'll be the board to approve these four permits.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of our permit and right-of-way chairman. We accept the four permits that were applied. Moved by Mr. Rowland, second by Mr. Ronald. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That's it. Board attorney, anything? Finance committee.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee met today, reviewed all invoices, and approved that they be paid as presented.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of our finance committee chairman to approve and pay all invoices. Moved by Mitch, second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any old business? Any old business? Any new business? Any new business? I'd just like to thank, Doug Chevy representing, our district attorney, Mr. Jeff Landry, our attorney for representing him over here.